to Kings of the Round Table, where we discuss all things comic related. I'm Sonya. Joining me here today at King's Comics, I have Paul, writer and illustrator of Pandia, and Christopher, writer of comics and fiction and all things wonderful. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Pleasure.
So both of you have a lot of work out there in the general comic universe. How difficult was it for you to find your place in a market that is obviously really quite crowded and full of so many other voices?
I guess the driving thing has to be some sort of twisted belief that you know what you're doing. And one of my publishers, Baden Kurgan over at Black House Comics, he characterises me once or twice. He said, I'm the type of guy, basically, I will do whatever it takes to get my work out there on the shelves. And I guess I've done that. I've self-published in Australia, nationally in newsagents. I've worked for Marvel and DC. I sold my first story to DC without me meeting. I actually broke in through the mail just by, which apparently you can't do.
Can't do that anymore, no.
And I guess obsession's a fairly handy tool to have in this business. So yeah, I sort of barriers. Yeah, they're okay. They're interesting challenges, but sort of the stories have got to get out somehow.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I sort of started because I had a love of comics, and I thought, oh look, I'll try this thing on, and it started as a webcomic. And again, I've got to agree, the obsession thing is what drove me. But I've got to sort of give a big hand to sort of social media and trying to market myself. I'm sort of a self-marketed comics creator. And I just sort of have been tinkering and sort of pushing my title here and there wherever I can. And it's got a little traction, it's got a bit of an audience, and I think that's what really continues to drive me. As to how difficult it is, well, depends on the level of success you want, really. I
suppose anything is difficult depending on how far you want it to go.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, you have to have that passion and that drive and that twisted sense that I deserve to be here. My story deserves to be told.
Yeah. But
Paul, you were saying yours started off as a webcomic. So, and a lot of Pandia is digital. It's on the internet. Is there a difference between publishing on the internet and having something tangible? Like, is there a sense that you have to have something in print for it to be successful, or not so much?
Well, first of all, I think the fan base of comics, we've sort of learnt over the years, is that there isn't like a specific web comic audience and a print comic audience. There's just a comic audience, and they will read it wherever they can get their hands on it. Starting it as a web comic, I found that there was a big pro and a big con. The big pro and con are exactly the same thing, is that anybody can write a webcomic and get it out there for free. You know, you get a Blogger account or a WordPress account and you just start publishing. The con is anybody can publish a webcomic for free. And so you get a lot of stuff out there that just floods the market. And you look up webcomics online and there's just absolutely everything.
There's a crazy amount that's out there,
and you can get drowned out in the noise.
So, and I guess the other thing with, if you do it digitally, online, you've got an international audience. You can get to anywhere in the world, any single country in the world. Is that important, or do you want to keep local? Is that important, keeping a certain local flavour, or do you want to push it to the world? Do you want to push it as far as you can go, I guess is the thing.
So I guess for me, I'd like to have an each way bet on that one. I've written stories that I just want to tell a story, and I've set the story sometimes where the editors wanted me to locate it. But I'm actually doing a project at the moment that is going to specifically have an Australian presentation, and we are focusing the story on Australian locales, specifically because we see its dominant sales as being within Australia. And it was an opportunity. I won't go into it too much because it's all under wraps at the moment, but it's doing a lot of superhero trope stuff with an Australian backdrop.
I'm going to take the other angle and say that, I think an international market, and specifically a US market, is important for some sort of success, just because they do have the lion's share. You know, that is the largest market in the world for almost any form of entertainment if you take a look at demographics right across the board. We're a very small, very niche market here in Australia. And it is easy to at least crack into the market. There are many avenues, both digitally and in print. My experience has been one in which I have collaborated with some overseas artists in
Yep.
America, and that's a really fast way of getting your stuff seen by overseas audiences.
Yeah.
Collaborate with a book, it'll be printed overseas, it'll be sold at conventions by other people. You don't have to go.
You don't even have to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the height of arrogance. And your stuff gets seen by overseas audiences.
Yeah.
And if, a small percentage of them come to your website and see your work, well, then that's great.
Paul, you brought up an interesting point about collaborating online. Like, do we have boundaries anymore? Because you just email somebody, there you go, email, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. Is there such a thing as a boundary now? Can anyone collaborate with anybody on anything now?
Yeah, well, I have.
Yeah.
And the thing was that the platform that we used was a publishing company called Kablam.
Yep.
That was one of the first I think, print-on-demand services. And they made it very easy for you to get your stuff together, get it to them in a digital format, and then they would make it available for you to print and order online, and so that you could sell physically. Well, and they also had a storefront that was online as well.
Yep.
Because of that, it just comes down to how organised you can be. And I got together with some other artists, and we got about 3 anthologies done.
Wow.
And they're out there circulating somewhere. They've been
Out in the world.
They're out in the world, exactly. And so, donated them to libraries, and
Yep.
kids are picking them up and taking a look at them, and that's really pretty cool.
Now, as far as creative development in Australia is concerned, is there enough of it here, do you think, or are we lacking a little bit, and that's kind of why Australian content isn't quite getting out as much as it could be?
The comics thing's a bit reflective of the old music thing and the film thing, which used to be, you want to make your fortune, young person, go to London, go to New York, whatever. And it's still a bit of that, because we don't have, except for we only have small indie style comic book companies here, where the UK had all the DC Thompson companies, and it had 2000 AD, and they were great fertile grounds for developing people. And the United States, of course, has had Marvel, DC, and dozens of other companies at any time. Japan's got dozens of publishers, and Europe's had a very healthy scene with perhaps more of an arty ended sort of scene, but there's been plenty of opportunities. Here, there's just about nothing, but it's rapidly changing,
Good.
and picking up a hell of a lot of speed.
Yep.
And I guess a topic for a whole other session would be, what's a publisher now? Can anyone be a publisher?
Yeah.
And there's a signal that I think anyone can be with the organisational skills that you talked about. You can effectively become a one-stop shop in your own lounge room. So.
Absolutely. Do we have the talent? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just have to take a look at any of the indie aisles
Yep.
in any comic store across the nation, and there are people out there producing stuff like The Deep, and
Exactly.
the Gestalt guys over in Perth,
Yep.
Zombie Cities, just to name a few. And it's just, I think it comes down to a marketing perspective. If we can market it on a world scale, then yes, I think the success will follow.
That's cool. So basically, have the passion, be a bit twisted,
Yeah.
be organised,
Yeah.
and find a really good marketing person,
right.
and you can pretty much find your place on the shelf or in the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the way to go.
But look, to balance it out, I mean, all those things are important considerations, but I guess what makes you do that story is not an overly cynical, how am I going to market this approach? It does come down to, there's a story that you
Write a
really,
story.
that for whatever reason of ego or whatever, you really think it's worth telling to other people, and you want to put it on paper, and that comes first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having a decent thing to say is, and to tell it in the medium of words and pictures is what it's all about.
There's also avenues like Comixology that have recently opened up their doors with Submit, which, again, anyone can submit a comic to them, but they do have a fairly rigorous submission process that they do look at what you've done, see if it's actually up to par, because they also have a brand to put out there.
Yeah.
But what I liked about it is that they have opened it up to international creators, so Australian market. Unfortunately, places like CreateSpace, which is Amazon's arm, you can sort of only get the equivalent of itchy and scratchy money if you're an Australian. It's like, hey, here's some Amazon credits. But Comixology is actual real world money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of percentages that go around, but you get published and you get seen by a comics reading audience.
Well, thank you so much for joining me here at my round table, Paul, Chris. It's been really wonderful. It's very, very interesting as well to find out the other side of the comic book world. Thank you.
Thanks
Pleasure.
for having me.
I'll be back with new guests and new topics, but in the meantime, guys, pop your comments up on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, because I'm really keen to hear what you guys have to think about this. Thanks for watching. Bye.